Hey Acers, glad I can be with you again today, and welcome back to the Ace Role-Playing Games channel where I get to talk with you about game mastering, and I'm specifically focusing on Savage Worlds right now, but I will also be moving into other systems as well. However, today, by request from a comment, and this shows that I do listen to and read your comments, I am actually going to talk about how I keep track of all the rules. Because I have some fans and followers that are blind and things like that, and I want to specifically answer his question, and be glad to share this with you guys too. Because yeah, I admit I do have quite a few rules up here in my head, and I definitely would like to encourage you in ways of finding your own ways of remembering things. But first of all, before I get started, I do have to say thank you to my wife because she got me this cool blanket. It's got rocket ships on it. Okay, if I haven't gushed about it yet, when I was a little kid, I think I was 6 maybe or 7, my grandma got me a robot that was a D-cell battery robot that it wound up and it would walk, and it had this space scene on its chest, and it was so cool. I mean, grandmas, at least in my experience, both my grandmas kind of were out of touch with us as kids, and they didn't really know what we liked or know what we wanted, but somehow she nailed it with this one. It was plastic. It was dark blue plastic, had a clear chest roller inside of it, and like I said, the space scene inside, and it had some metal antennae that came off, and it was still to this day one of my favorite toys. Incidentally, I'm not even sponsored by them at all. I'm not sponsored by anybody right now. I'd like to get some sponsorship eventually, but hey, we'll just play that card when it comes, because my goal first and foremost is to show up for you guys. I do encourage you to share the videos with your friends. The whole like, subscribe thing. Yeah, do that. I don't understand it. Apparently there's some algorithm that runs on YouTube that recommends whatever. I'm here for you guys. That's what I'm here for. But I would like you to share the videos with your friends, because I'd like them to kind of be able to think about what you're thinking about and maybe have conversations with you. And that's what gaming's all about. Gaming is about building friends. And even some of those friends can be a little bit odd. But you know what? Their oddness is not what we focus in on. The fact that we're here to have fun and tell a group story together, that is what we're focused on. That's why one of the Ace Role-Playing Games rules, this is a hard rule that I've enforced. Grown-up topics stay at the door. I appreciate that you are an individual, but whatever you choose in your life is not who you are. Who you are is a precious person in this world, and you are loved. That's all that matters. You are one of billions, but you are one, and that's important. So the rest of it is commentary. And it is not going to get people to stop liking you if you think that just by being cantankerous towards other people will get people to not want to see you and want to ostracize you. If you're there to game and you've left your grown-up topics at the door, even as a grown-up, I still do that. I leave politics, I leave religion, I leave anything that I know is going to exacerbate things or make things bad between two people. I leave them at the door. So that's kind of an important thing. And so moving into today's topic, how do I keep it in my head? Well, first of all, with Savage Worlds, I've given you the foundational piece. And that is, and I look at the foundation of Savage Worlds to be shooting or spellcasting or any sort of a skill or a talent check. Some sort of an attribute check is the core of Savage Worlds. And that is a roll on a trait die and a wild die where the target number is 4 or better. That is the baseline. And that's not hard to remember. Now, will things change how the difficulty is? Yes. as just a simple example, let's take shooting, because shooting is one of my favorite ones to start with. Shooting in Savage Worlds is a good example because when you have when you shoot, you get you in a modern world, you get somebody who can pick up a gun and pull the trigger. And any idiot in our modern world could do that. Whether they're picking it up with hands that are shaking all over the place and they're pulling out the shot and they miss because it goes up into the roof, or whether they are stone cold picking the gun up out of their holster, locking it into and getting into not into a good shooting stance, because if you're in a shooting stance in real life, let me just that's things are gone wrong. Things are just gone wrong. But if you pick that up and you cock in and you've got your thumbs pointed at your target and you're squeezing that trigger and being surprised by the break, and it is just, you could be a stone cold shooter. You could be that shooter of the highest caliber, but there's still a chance you can miss. And the distance is going to make a difference. So let's take, again, and this is the way that I teach the basic dice system of Savage Worlds to other people. I taught it so well on Saturday that, yesterday, that a kid who just came into the store to buy some other games, he and his wife were there. And I say kid because he's, probably in his early 20s, and both of them are. They were still in their cute stage. But anyway, they came in to buy a couple other games. And I was talking to the guy working the desk at the store yesterday about Savage Worlds and explaining it to him. And I had pulled their copy off the shelf. They had one copy, and I pulled it off the shelf and I was showing different pieces of it and things like that. And this kid got interested and listened to it because he said, I wanted to try something like Dungeons and Dragons, but it seemed too complex, too complicated. This makes sense. I want to buy this. And he bought the book right then and there. He basically pulled it off the shelf. I showed it to him. He grabbed it from me. He walked over to the register and bought it. So I guess explaining it this way is helping some people. And that's good. That's what I want. I want to be able to explain it in such a way that it helps people. So let's go to my favorite example of we're heroes in a room and there's bad guys in the room, and the bad guy pulls out a gun and he points it right at your character. And your buddy's character, who's playing a martial artist, gets their initiative turn first, and they do a called shot to the hand and knock that gun out onto the ground. But now the bad guy, he's going to pull out another gun and try and shoot your friend right next to him for doing that. So your character has never shot a gun before in her life, but she's going to pick up that gun and she's going to try and shoot. And there's like that. It's like that scene in Sneakers where Mary McDonald's character picks up the gun and her hands are shaking all over the place. I'm an excellent marksman, woman. She's actually pulling an intimidation roll, but that's neither here nor there. But her hands are shaking as she raises up, and try and get your players to describe what they're doing before you call for the roll. Say, okay, what are you doing? So they're going to say, shaking hands. The girl goes, with my shaking hands, I pull up the gun. My hands are shaking, and I'm pulling the trigger. And that's the point where you say, roll the dice. So we're going to use the D4, and which I hope is my fairest of my it's a gemstone die. This one is technically actually just glass, but this is the pretty one that I showed you. I got it, Fanex. This is my 6. So we're going to roll one of each of those, because when I explain this to people and explain how this works, I say, okay, any idiot can shoot a gun. So that's going to be represented with a D4. But because your character is special in this imaginary movie, your character's the star, they deserve one more shot at getting it right, getting it correct. So we're going to give them the D6, the wild die. Now, either of these dice can ace, is the term in Savage Worlds, which means explode. It means that you can pick it up. If you roll the highest number capable, you pick it up, roll again, and add the new number to that overall roll. So we're going to roll those dice. And, okay, in this case, I got a 1 on the 4 and a 1 on the D6. So I critically failed. So that means our shaking shooter, she pulls the trigger and ends up shooting her martial artist friend just did it. Or if I mean, that could be the call you make as a game master. Or I always like to say, well, what does that look like when you just critically failed? Did you shoot your? And I might put suggestions in there. Did you shoot your friend, or what happened? Did the gun just break apart in your hand? What happened here? And because oftentimes players can be meaner to their characters than you can as the game master. So you got to kind of balance that. But it is a case of that was bad. What happened? Now, also remind them when they're unskilled at the thing, it's going to be a D4 and a D6, but you subtract 2 from the final total. So in this case, this is an abysmal failure. But there's not actual rules in Savage Worlds for abysmal failure, so you just roll with it. So then I say, well, now maybe say your character's been to the gun range, they've shot a few times, they're actually getting used to the bang of the gun. So we roll that same roll, but this time we don't subtract 2. They've got a skill of D4 in that thing. Oh, and look, we rolled a 4. The light's blurring it out. D4, roll it again, and we got a 2 more. So we got a 6. So a 6 definitely hits. Now, we take the D4 out of the tray, we add in the D6, and those 2 D6s are now going to be our damage roll. And this is how I'll teach them, is because I'll tell them, once you got the hit, now let's do damage. Even though I've got further to show them on dice types for the trait, I will stop and I'll say, this is how we do it for the damage. So we roll damage. In this case, we got a 4. And so I'll say, you roll the 2 dice and you add them together. And these dice can also ace. So I will then, if I don't have any poker chips handy, which mine are back over there, so I'm just going to keep this rolling. Rolling on the rolling. And I'm going to I'll pull out my Deadlands Ghost Rock counters. And I'll say, these will work for what you get at the beginning of every game. Every character gets 3 bennies. That's American short for benefit. And you have the 3 bennies that you get to start with. Now, in this case, there's the 3 bennies. And as somebody who just rolled a 4, and when most people have a toughness of 5 in an unarmored world, we're going to go ahead and spend a benny. And we're going to roll that again. We're going to try and get better than a 4. Okay, this time I rolled a pair of 6s. So I get to roll them both again. So that's 12. And that's 16 plus another 6. So that's 22. 29 points of damage. Okay, this is where I get to explain about shaken. So I explain, if their toughness is 5, that's your new target number, and you can get a 5, 6, 7, or 8, and up to that point is a status called shaken. And then I explain shaken. Shaken is an important concept for us as game masters to remember. Shaken is when you are up to 3 over the target number of their toughness, and that represents that moment. There's a movie called Jaws, which I don't know how your parents feel about that one, but check with them before you see it if you're under this certain age. But Jaws, there's a part where he's chumming bait off the side of the boat to try and attract the shark. And the shark jumps past the boat and dives back in the water. And it scares the crap out of him. With a cigarette in his mouth, he goes back into the cabin going, we're going to need a bigger boat. We're going to need a bigger boat. Now, I'm not endorsing smoking at all, but I'm just saying that's the scene with Roy Scheider going, we're going to need a bigger boat. So that is the moment where his head suddenly is now out of the game. He has just been startled so much that his head is out of the game. The same thing happens like in a war scenario where you got your soldiers and they're marching and the bullet whizzes right past the ear. And the guy's like, duh. That's shaken. Shaken means your brain isn't working right with all the rest of you right now. So you can only talk or move. You can run. You can definitely run because that atavistic, that primal need of the human being to survive, to run, that is very there. But the other option is to, on your turn, you roll to unshake. And so this is why your spirit die of your attributes is not a waste. So that's what you get when you get up to 3 over. But in this case, we got a 29. So not only did we go 3 over, we went 4 over. So that's 9. And we went 4 over that. That's 13. And we went 4 over that. That is 17. We went 4 over that. And that is 23. We went 4 over that. It's 28. We went to 29. So that was shaken with 1, 2, 3, 4. That was shaken with 5 wounds. So the bad guy he's baloney missed now. That bullet hit him so hard that he's gone. And our shooter with the D4 in shooting just saved everybody's life by taking out the bad guy. So let's say your shooter has been to the gun store a few times. Let's say they've shot the gun, they bought one for home defense or whatever, and they can hit what they're shooting at a little better than half the time. Now we raise that to the D6 as a skill. And in this case, even our D6 shooter only scored a 3 and a 1. So neither one of those is a success. What if they were a cop? They shot hundreds of bullets in practice. They would have like a D8 in shooting. So we roll that. Okay, got a 4, which is a success, and a 5, which is also a success. So either one of those is fine, and we go forward with rolling the damage and things like that. Let's say our person was a soldier in the military. They would now have a D10. And we roll that. And the 5 is a success. However, the 10 on the D10 is an ace. So we roll that again. Oh, we got another 10. And one more. So 21. 21 to hit. So that is target numbers 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. That's 5 raises, 21. Now, Savage Worlds, realizing that it got out of hand with previous versions, in some of the earlier versions, you just got a +1 for every raise over the hit. And so, in this case, it'd be +5. That would just be devastating. So, Savage Worlds, in order to kind of keep that under wraps, says that when you're doing your to-hit roll, you only get to add in 1 extra D6 for the damage. But now these can ace all we want. Like we just saw. We saw 5 raises. In this case, it's just 8 points of damage. But 8 points of damage is enough to shake somebody who is just at a vigor of 6, so they have a toughness of 5, and they just got hit, and that's shaken. They're shaken now. They have to unshake on their turn, or spend a Benny to unshake. So let's continue our example and say we have a sniper. Somebody who's just absolutely the best of the best when it comes to shooting, so they would roll a D12. And that's the top of Savage Worlds. So we roll that. In this case, a 3 and a 2. Even the sniper can miss once in a while. So that's the basic idea, and that's how you put that in your head, is that if you can get the basic idea of 4 is typical success, every 4 over that is a raise, then that's all you need to put into your head. Everything else is commentary. Everything else is detail. So let's take an example of what happens if I'm making this shot at medium range now. Instead of close range, I'm making this shot at medium range. And for handguns, of course, medium range is going to be a smaller number than medium range for a rifle. As a matter of fact, the rifle, on the other hand, is going to be having a difficult time shooting at close range. That's the downside of a rifle. But if you're doing it well with your rifle, they're not going to get close enough to have to use your handgun. And shotguns, for example, to represent the fact that they can spread with buckshot, they get a +2 to their hit roll. However, their damage roll starts at 3d6 at close range, goes to 2d6 at medium range, and 1d6 at long range to represent the fact that it spreads. If you do both barrels on a double barrel shotgun, boom, then you add in a modifier again of you do this time a case of +2 on the damage. So it's just a case of, again, know that 4 is the basic target number. 4 over any target number is the raise. If we're looking at more melee combat, because I don't want to leave that out, melee combat, their toughness is determined, or not their toughness, but their parry. The number that is your target number to hit is determined by how good of a fighter they are. And that is their fighting die. You take the highest number that the fighting die is capable of, you divide that by 2, and then you add 2 to it. So if somebody has a D6, then they're going to divide that in half, give them 3, and then they're going to add 2 to that to give them 5. So 5 would be their parry. But if they're a good martial artist and they got a D8, then that means the half is 4 plus 2 is 6. Or if it's a D10, the half is 5 plus 2 is 7. So that parry goes up, and it goes up quick. And the difficulties on making shots go up. Remember that there are other difficulties to introduce as well. There's fog, there's fire, there's smoke, there's other things that you might want to have the players roll for. And here's the other rule, just cardinal rule. If it's not going to be an interesting failure, don't roll it. If failure won't be interesting, give them no success. Or if failure will not point them in the right direction so that they can, or if success won't point them in the right direction so they can continue on with the story, don't give them that either. My friend Tracy Hickman, when he was talking about in the very first part of this great, wonderful tome that every game master, I think, should own a copy of, 2nd edition XDM. In the first one, they kind of go into it kind of more as a silly thing. But in this one, they were pretty serious about it. And they put in some really good rules. But he talks in here about how he was playing a barbarian, and the barbarian wasn't getting to do anything because he was in the dungeon with the dungeoneering equivalents of forensic accountants. And they were trying to think too hard through every single one of these rooms. And they were in a room with runes on the walls, and that's the way that the dungeon master had read the description. And they had spent whole session, or even sessions plural, in there trying to read these runes before going on to the next room. And Tracy was sitting there bored and frustrated, and he complained to one of his fellow players after one night and said, "This is just horrible. I can't get into this. This is just not working." And the other person said, "Well, you're a barbarian. Be barbaric." And as he says, an idea is a dangerous thing. And it's true, because he ends up the next session as they're like, "If I hold the gnome upside down, can she read the runes?" "No, you can't read the runes," says the dungeon master. And Tracy goes, "Is there a door in the room?" And the dungeon master says, "Yes," and describes the door, and it's off to the side. And Tracy says, "I open it." And the other players go, "No, he doesn't." And he says, "Yes, I do." And they end up running into a pair of minotaurs and actually have to get into a fight and use their characters to solve the problem. So that's what you want to encourage your players to do. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing this. So that being said, I want to wrap up here because I've gone a little over my target of about 15 minutes on these videos now, but I'm going to work at trying to keep them from going over 30. So I want to thank you for joining me. And next time I will go through another hazard in the book, and I will continue to tell you how I feel about gaming and about what my thoughts are. And I want to hear yours. I want to share them with you. And I thank everybody who's watched my little short that I came up with earlier this week about just bagging the rules when they don't work for you. And if they do get in the way, don't use them. If they don't get in the way, go ahead and use them. But remember that I love you. You're amazing. This world is a better place because you're here. And don't let any other person or anything going on in your life that is not making you happy make you think that you need to leave, because we need you here. And I look forward to having you at my table. Have a good day.